so good to be here. And were you in here watching Superman in the Moment?
Yes.
Yeah, that was me, the little girl. It was a couple of years ago. You know, when I auditioned for the part, I had to go in and read, and I was told that I'd be working with Superman. I didn't know who George Reeves was, but I sure knew who Superman was. So that was the fun part for me. And I'm so happy to see you again, John.
Yes.
And he's such a wonderful moderator, and I'm just happy to be back. And thank you for all being here. And thank you, Ron, for inviting me back. I keep turning up like a bad penny.
A good fit.
Oh, thank you. I keep thinking, he invites me back, and I go, well, I think they're going to get sick of me. I keep coming, but thank you. It's so nice to be here and to see all of you. So.
And in addition to being with Superman, you also were in the Lone Ranger movie.
Yeah, I did the Lone Ranger with Clayton Moore, and I did most of my work as a child, of course. And at the time, I didn't know who Clayton Moore was. I didn't know who George Reeves was. And I was very blessed because I was directed by Cecil B. DeMille and Frank Capra and George Stevens, but it meant nothing to me because I was too young. So it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized how fortunate I was, and I cherish my memories, and it's so fun to talk about them. So.
And then in addition to Lone Ranger, on the subject of Westerns, you did, was it 3 episodes of Wagon Train?
Yeah, I did one with, well, the first one was the pilot with Ernest Borgnine, and then I did one with Lou Costello, and it was the only dramatic role that he ever did. And then I did the third one after, well, sadly, as you know, Ward Bond passed away, and then it became different. It was John McIntyre as the wagon master, and then it became color. And so I did one later when I was a little bit older with Lorraine Day and Robert Fulton.
What was it like working with Ward Bond?
He was terrific, and I've told this story before, so forgive me for being redundant, but when you're a child and you're on the movie set, it's required that you have 3 hours of schooling, and they send a school teacher from the Los Angeles Board of Education, and they call them welfare workers because they're actually there for the welfare of the child. They make sure that you can't have school you can't work more than 8 hours. You have to have breaks, you have to have 3 hours of schooling, and they're there to look out for everything. And so Ward Bond, he was used to working with a lot of guys, so he swore all the time. And he didn't need to. It wasn't because he was angry, he would just use the F-bomb every second. Well, I didn't even know what it meant, so it didn't really bother me. But the welfare worker went to the director and said, if he uses one more swear word in front of her, I'm taking her off the set. And she had that much clout and that much, it was up to her to look out for me. So they had to tell Ward, because he wasn't even aware he was doing it. He was just used to being with a bunch of guys, and it would just roll off his tongue. And so, anyway, they talked to him, and she did have that much clout that she could have pulled me from the set, which would have cost them a lot of money, because I had a pretty big part in that show, and they'd have to reshoot everything. So anyway, he came over and apologized profusely and said, he never even said darn after that. So, but he was a terrific man, and I have a photo that he signed for me that I treasure. I have it on my wall in my little office in my house, and it says, to Beverly, the finest little actress. And that meant so much to me. I just cherished it.
And then what was it like working with Lou Costello in the dramatic role?
Lou Costello was one of my all-time favorites. When I heard, now I did know who Abbott and Costello were, so when I got that part, I was thrilled. And I was hoping he would be nice, and he was everything and more. And he was the sweetest guy. And the storyline, it shows how times have changed, because back then the storyline was he was a drifter, he was an alcoholic, and I was just a runaway orphan girl, and we were traveling together as stowaways on the wagon train. I don't know if any of you have seen that. You have?
Yes.
Thank you. And, but in today's world, you couldn't have a show like that with a little girl traveling with a man. It would be totally inappropriate. But it was innocent, you know, we were just friends, and so nobody thought anything of it, that it was a little girl traveling with a man. So it was one of my favorite roles, and I feel like I'm tooting my own horn by telling this. I don't mean to brag, but it meant so much to me. He, in his book, he talked about doing the dramatic role, and he said there was a little girl in that by the name of Beverly Washburn, and I couldn't have done it without her. And then, no, he was just so, he was terrific. And then he sent me a note afterward, and he said, I hope I'm lucky enough to work with you again. And sadly, he died not too long after that. But I cherish those memories. He was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a great episode. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, it's terrific. See if anyone else has any questions. Yes, sir.
How was it to work on the set of Shane? Shane at Classic Western?
Shane Allen Ladd. Again, I was so young, I didn't realize I was being directed by George Stevens, and I didn't know who Allen Ladd was, but it was fun. We filmed most of it in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and so we were there for 3 months. And so I played one of the Lewis children, Edgar Buchanan's daughter, so I don't even think I had dialogue, but I was, you know, throughout the movie. And it was just fun. I had no idea at the time that all these years later that it would be considered one of the best Westerns, so I feel grateful that I was a small part of it.
That's a beautifully shot film.
Pardon me?
That's a beautifully shot film.
Yeah, I know, and everybody, it was so nice and friendly, and it was a really fun set. I think I was 8 at the time, so I didn't appreciate it the way I do now.
Yes, sir, in the back.
When you were doing Spider Baby, you guys just had a great time or what?
Yes.
Because I actually saw it. I saw it up in Chicago at a film festival. I just never saw it. And I had a daughter-in-law from Jamaica. She'd never heard of it. She's in love with you. You and your sister in that movie. But I just seemed like you guys were on the ball.
We were, I don't know if any of you have seen that movie. I have with me, it's a crazy movie. Rob Zombie contacted me and said that they were putting out a soundtrack, which I had just gotten news of that last year when I was here, and I have it with me, the soundtrack, and they put the craziest picture of me on. It was actually an outtake, because what happened is I forgot my next line, and I didn't know the camera was still rolling. So I looked into the camera and made this stupid face like that. And it's on the cover. You'll see it. I said to Rob, oh my gosh, I can't believe you used that photo. And he said, I had to, just had to, it's classic. So anyway, it was all done very tongue-in-cheek, and we filmed the whole thing in like 13 days. And for me, it was so thrilling to work with Lon Chaney, who again, I know it sounds redundant, but it's true. He was one of the nicest men ever. And sadly, I'm the only one still alive now. So I do have a quick Spider Baby, if we have time, story. I was with Jack Hill, who wrote the film and directed it, and I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it's a very quirky little out there strange movie. And Jack, he's still alive. He's now 95, I believe, 94. And we were doing one of these conventions, and they showed Spider Baby. So afterward, they asked if Jack and I would come up to the, the room to. They were filming. I think it was a podcast or a streaming thing. I don't know exactly what it was, but they asked us if we'd go. And so the moderator turns to Jack, and he says, "Jack, I have to ask you something." He said, "Spider Baby, it's such a strange little, bizarre, out there, quirky little film." He goes, "I'm just curious, like, how would you sit down and write such a thing? I mean, how did that come about?" And so Jack, who's like in his 90s, he goes, "Well, smoking a lot of weed. That explains it. So Spider Baby truly was one of the most fun roles because we had no idea, you know, it would be popular now. I got a fan mail for Spider Baby from Hong Kong. And I was recently in Italy to do a Star Trek convention, and a little Italian guy came up and couldn't even speak English, and he had a Spider Baby cover of the DVD. And I'm like, so I don't understand the popularity, but I'm grateful for it. And Quentin Tarantino was instrumental in getting it re-released because it just sat there for years after we did it. And the sad part is that Lon Chaney and Joe Banner never got to see the popularity. Sid did. Sid Haig, that was a horrible loss. He was wonderful. I adored him. And I did another movie with him called Pit Stop with Jack Hill. And anyway, it's fun to talk about Spider Baby because it's such a bizarre little film. I think the budget was like $11. We had fun.
Yes, sir.
How was your experience with the remake of Spider Baby?
Well, that was fun too. They contacted me and said they were doing a remake, and it was by a filmmaker named Dustin Ferguson, who does a lot of little, and he films them like in 3 days. And he said he'd like me to be a part of it since I was in the original. Well, it wasn't a sequel, it was a remake, so they didn't really have a role for me. So he created one. He wrote like a little cameo. So I only worked 1 day, and it was fun. Jack Hill, you know, had his stamp of approval on it and was involved also. And it was fun to do it. I played a lady from the Child Protective Services that come to check on the married children. So they just added that as a cameo. And then Ron Chaney, who's Lon Chaney's, I'm sure you all know, Junior's grandson. And we met for the first time. It was fun. We got to have dinner together and everything. And they also wrote in a cameo for him because they wanted him to participate since he was part of the Chaney family. And but I just, you know, being the only one still alive, it's sad for me. But well, Mary Mitchell is still alive, but she's now in her 90s. She played the secretary and Anne, and she's completely retired now. She doesn't go anywhere. So basically, I'm the only one left, which is sad.
I just want to say, on the subject of like smaller budget horror films, I really enjoyed doing Tales of Frankenstein.
Oh,
Yes.
another low budget one. It was fun too.
Yes.
Hi, Beverly.
Hi.
Were there any roles that you were up for, you had a shot at, but for whatever reason you didn't get selected for it?
Oh, yes, of course. You know, I was blessed that I had a very supportive family. You know, there's that old adage about Hollywood stage mothers, and they get a bad rap, some of them, because, well, for instance, when I worked on The Greatest Show on Earth, and Cecil B. DeMille was the director, I was the little girl in the audience where Jimmy Stewart, dressed as a clown, comes up and we have a little conversation, and then he makes a little doggy balloon and gives it to me. And so we were filming it, and all of a sudden this lady in the background yelled, "Cut!" And everybody turned and looked. She was the mother of one of the little boys who was an extra in the film. And she thought that he wasn't being seen on camera. And I mean, Cecil B. DeMille, as you all know, the director's the one who says cut. So I was kind of young then, well, I was very young. I didn't know all the commotion, what was going on, but they instantly, sadly, marched her and her son on the set. But anyway, I kind of segued, I digress, but my parents were very supportive, and they said, you know, you're not always going to get every role that you get, that you want, and it's okay. It doesn't mean you're not good enough, it just means you weren't right for it. And if you do get the role, it means that you were the fortunate one. It doesn't make you any better than anybody else. And so they always instilled in me that just do your best, and you can't get them all, and it's not your turn, and it's somebody else's turn, and be happy that somebody else got it, and you get the next one. So there were, of course, roles. I mean, you can't get them all, and but I was always okay with it because my mother instilled it in me. But I was blessed to get quite a few of the roles that I went out for, and I feel so grateful for that. I did work a lot as a child.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever form any lasting friendships with any of the other child actors that you worked with?
Yes,
People you're still
many. In
touch
fact,
with?
one is my very best friend who I've known for 68 years, and we're both only 60, so I'm not sure. Anyway, and she's one of the guests that Ron and Ursula invited, and I'm so happy. We've known each other, you know, she was doing the Mickey Mouse Club when I was doing Old Yeller. And so we had school together in the big red trailer, and we just became instant friends, and we've been friends ever since. In fact, we were just working on a documentary that's just about done. It's called Here's Looking at You, Kids. And it's Sharon Baird, Mimi Gibson, and me. And it's about our friendship and knowing each other and not being competitive or jealous of one another, but just being supportive in our friendship. So that we're hoping will come out maybe next year. I don't know where, but festivals or something. And then I also just did a pilot called Dusty Bluffs that is supposed to come out in August. It'll be streaming on Blaze, I think. And I just play this over-the-top crazy woman. I have a son, and then his best friend is like 6'6". Well, I'm 5 foot nothing. So when it's so funny because I'm always yelling at him and stuff, and he's like 6'5" or 6". I come up to his belt buckle, and he's afraid of me because I'm always yelling at him. So I'm always glaring at him, and he's like afraid. But it's a comedy. It's kind of a silly premise. It's kind of like Dumb and Dumber and a Napoleon Dynamite type thing. It's a comedy, kind of off the wall, but that was fun. We filmed it in Utah, and that's supposed to start streaming in August, I believe.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Beverly, you've done both movies and TV. Do you like them equally, or do you have a preference?
Well, the main difference is the time, because when you do a movie, like a motion picture, typically you're there like 3 months, like Old Yeller was 3 months. So you actually become like family, because you get to see each other on a daily basis. And with TV, you don't necessarily, you know, sometimes you're there one day, sometimes 3. And so you don't have the opportunity to bond as far as like feeling like family or anything. You still form like a friendship, but it's quick. So that's the main difference, is the length of time. So, and well, plus when they're doing a movie, since they are there for so long, they might do one scene over and over and over, and you know, several takes. Where with TV, they're more on a time frame, so they do it a lot quicker. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about the charity you're involved in?
About what?
The charity you're involved in?
The charity? Several. I'm an animal lover, yeah. So I think most of you know that. So I like to always, it gives me an opportunity when we come here and we sell our photos. I'm not the only one who does it, but we like to give to. So because there's so many animal ones, I alternate. Every time I do one, I pick from the top of the pile, and then next month it's a different one. So they're all, there are many of them. And of course, I live in Las Vegas, and sadly, our shelter's been just overrun, although they did adopt out 68 animals last week. They were putting up animals without charging people. So they were able to, because they didn't have room for them all. So those are the kind of charities. Plus, St. Jude, of course, but that's mainly my animal charities is what I get
When you were a child actor, what was your process for memorizing scripts? Did you get help from your family? Did you do it a couple times a day? Did you have a coach?
You know, it's the funniest thing because in my old age now, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but back then I had what was considered like a photographic memory, and I learned to read when I was 5. For some reason, it just came to me easily, and so I would look at the script and immediately memorize it. I just had that. I don't know how I did it. There was a show I did on matinee theater, and this was back in the days of live TV. Now they do a lot of live, but they'll have the capability, like if they're taping it, if there's a mistake, they can, you know, stop for a minute. But back in the days of live TV, which I did a lot of, it would go on as you did it. And so in this one show in matinee theater, I played this really precocious little child, and at any given moment, I would just start reciting poetry. And so not only did I have to memorize my lines, I had to remember paragraphs like this long of poetry, which I could never do today. But as a child, I did. And my mother would always, you know, not really coach me, but she would read with me, like she would do the other person's part. And then I just had it. I just memorized it, and I can't explain it because I don't have that ability now, but I did as a child.
Yep.
I just watched Old Yeller for the first time since I was a little kid, about 2.5 weeks ago in preparation for this conference, seeing you and Beverly. And I was just blown away as an adult how emotionally impactful it is. You know, the Library of Congress has not inducted that film into the National Film Registry. As far as I know, I mean, unless someone stands me correct, I think that's a sin. Because the Black Stallion from '79 has been inducted, and several other ones, including, I believe, Last of Them Home, and they deserve it as well. They're great films. But I think Old Yeller stands up through time to be just as good as any of those others. So I want to know your take on it. I know you love the movie, but everyone asks you about the cast, how was it to work on the film, but I want to know your feelings on the impact of the film on culture and people's lives.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, of course, you know, sounding redundant, but that was also one of my very favorite movies, and one that I'm probably best known for. It seems people remember me, some from Superman in the Moment or Wagon Train or whatever, but it seems to be Old Yeller, Star Trek, and Spider Baby. And so, you know, being in Old Yeller meant so much to me for many reasons. One, of course, is my everlasting friendship with Sharon Baird, who's here, and also Tommy Kirk. And sadly, I'm the only one still alive from that movie. And a couple, like 2 years ago, Tommy Kirk and I were invited to do an Old Yeller reunion at the Hollywood show in Los Angeles. And Tommy also lived in Las Vegas, where I did. And he was a bachelor, and I'm a widow, and so we were both alone. And so I would invite him over for dinner a lot, and we'd get together. And as I'm sure you all know, he had a heart attack and passed away. And so obviously we couldn't do the reunion. You can't do a reunion with one person. But I don't think he ever realized how much he was loved. When he died, I had so many emails from people that I didn't even know. I don't know how they got my email address. I was happy that they did. And they were sending condolences, and from many gay men that said because of Tommy they were able to come out, because they were always afraid to, but they knew that Tommy was gay. And because of him, it made their life easier because they were able to come out. And I can't tell you how much I love Tommy. That was a horrible loss, and in fact, he was pretty much a loner, and by choice. And I got the call. He had a heart attack, and he was living in a mobile home park. And I got the call, and the lady said that he didn't really have anybody. His brother and his wife, sadly, didn't want anything to do with him because with him because he was gay. And Tommy said, I will always love my brother, he's my brother, but I don't want to go where I'm not invited. And so, anyway, I don't think he ever knew how much he was loved. And he thought that Old Yeller was good because, well, they show it in elementary schools, and he said it shows them about love and loss, and that if you get, you know, when you have a dog that dies, it's sad, of course, and but you can get another one, and it doesn't replace them, but it helps. For me, I always thought it was a little bit soon to show people, to show children in elementary school. I know it was a lesson, but it was so emotional. Because I've had grown men come up and say, I can't watch that movie, it's too sad, it makes me cry. And I had somebody come up and said, that movie ruined my life. I think I told this story last year, I'll try to make it quick because I know you have other guests enough. But I was doing a convention, a Q&A, and there was a little girl sitting in the front row, and I was talking about Tommy. This was a couple years ago, and of course he was still alive. And I was talking about our friendship and everything, and all of a sudden she raised her hand and she said, may I ask you a question? And I said, sure, honey, what's your question? And she said, well, that boy that you're talking about, well, he's the one who shot Old Yeller. And I said, yes, and she said, well, how can you still be friends with him? It was so cute. And then I did one time, I was standing off to the side and they were going to have me out in the moderator, bless his heart. He said, now I'd like to introduce our guest. You'll remember her from the classic Disney movie, Old Yellow. Old Yellow.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
We read a lot about some of the struggles that child performers go through when they try and transition to adulthood. Did you go through any of that, and if not, why not? What do you think?
Well, not really. I think it stems back to you know, the way you're raised. I had a very wonderful family that always told me, you know, they would, if this was my dream and I wanted to do it, as long as I did my schooling and I did my homework and chores, and that I didn't get a big head, that I could do it. And so they were very supportive. And so I was blessed because I know there were a lot of children that basically fell by the wayside with drugs or alcohol, and I managed not to, which I'm grateful for. And going back to the previous question about friendships with child stars, Tony Dow he wrote the foreword for my book, and I'm still very close to his wife, Lauren, and he was just darling. And then of course Paul Peterson from the Donna Reed Show, and Lauren Chapin from The Father Knows Best. And so a lot of us are still, and you know, sadly so many of us have passed away, and I don't know why I'm still here. God, I just thank God every day for being above ground.
Ron and Ursula have a special presentation.
Thank you, John. And Beverly, firstly, we have something that one of Ursula's students, Cora, you want to come up with? We have from one of our vendors runs a chocolate factory in Pittsburgh, and here are some very nice chocolates. This is Cora. And then I think, Beverly, something else. Everyone here probably knows that when you need something at Monster Bash, you run to someone, one of our staff people that have orange shirts. And we don't sell orange shirts. We don't provide them to people that aren't staff. Well, we have to make an exception because she's been here so much. Beverly Washburn is now officially a Monster Bash staffer. Thank you, Beverly Washburn. Make sure you stop by her table, get her book, and John Bishop, thank you. Okay, coming up next, we're going to have John Bishop will be back to interview Rondo Hatton.
So I was very excited about that. And Don came to me today and said, I just want you to know it's a typo. And I said, why? And he said, Mr. Hatton is deceased. And I said, I hadn't heard the news. When did this happen? And I said, 1946.
The Brewman's next, and a funny little story. Jeffrey, our projectionist, I don't know if you saw myself and Jeffrey running around during Beverly's Q&A. We couldn't find the movie. But luckily, Jeffrey at the last minute found it. So we're going to screen the Brewman with Rondo Hatton in just a few moments.
Hey, don't where I had it. Don't where I had it.
Oh, it was sitting on the projector.